In August of 1977, something extraordinary happened. At the Big Ear Radio Observatory in Ohio, a faint whisper from the stars was captured, a signal so pure, so perfectly aligned with the hydrogen frequency, that the astronomer who discovered it circled the data printout and simply wrote one word in red ink. Wow! That single exclamation would go on to define one of the greatest mysteries in the history of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. The wow signal lasted just 72 seconds. It never repeated. No natural explanation has ever satisfied the scientific community. And in the decades since, it has haunted astronomers with one impossible question. Was it a message? For nearly 50 years, theories have swirled. Some said it was a comet, others argued it was radio interference, and many in the SETI community secretly hoped it was evidence of something far more profound. Proof that we are not alone. But the trail always went cold. The wow signal was a riddle without a source, an echo from the dark that seemed destined to remain unsolved. That is until now. Because racing through our solar system today is an object unlike anything we've ever studied before. It is called 3I Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar visitor in human history. A giant comet-like body, icy, carbon-rich and hurtling on a hyperbolic orbit that ensures it came from beyond the sun's gravitational grasp. An interstellar wanderer, older than Earth, older than our star, carrying with it the secrets of galaxies long past. And according to Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, this mysterious visitor may hold the key to that decades-old enigma. Loeb has suggested a provocative possibility, that the WOW signal and 3I Atlas are not unrelated events, but two chapters of the same story. The idea sounds like science fiction. A radio burst recorded in 1977, connected to a comet-like object entering our solar system in the 2020s. And yet, when Loeb ran the numbers, the alignment was unsettling. In the late 1970s, the calculated position of 3I Atlas matched the region of the sky where the WOW signal was heard. The chances of that coincidence, he argues, are less than 1%. Could the most famous unexplained radio signal in human history have been emitted not from a distant star, but from an interstellar object now passing right through our cosmic neighborhood? It is a claim that divides the scientific community. To skeptics, it is another case of Loeb's bold imagination running ahead of the data. To his supporters, it is precisely the kind of daring hypothesis that science needs if we are to break out of old assumptions. And whatever side one takes, the fact remains, 3I Atlas is no ordinary comet. Its composition, its chemistry, and even its trajectory defy expectations. If ever there were an object worth investigating for signs of technology, this might be it. But let's pause for a moment and consider the gravity of the suggestion. If Loeb is correct, the WOW signal was not a random burst of static from deep space. It was deliberate. It was directed. It was local. A whisper from a traveler now within our reach. And if that's true, then humanity has already received its first message from an extraterrestrial source. The implications of that are staggering. What does it mean if an interstellar object carried with it a transmitter powerful enough to reach Earth across hundreds of astronomical units? What if that whisper in 1977 was not an accident, but a test, a beacon meant to see if anyone on this fragile little planet was listening? Tonight we're going to dive into this possibility. We'll trace the path of 3I Atlas, examine Loeb's evidence, hear the objections of critics, and confront the haunting question at the center of it all. Could the WOW signal really have been a message from an interstellar visitor? One that has now entered our solar system? Because if Avi Loeb is right, then the mystery of the WOW signal has finally come full circle. And what it reveals about our place in the universe, something humanity may not be ready to face. On the night of August 15, 1977, the world was unknowingly about to receive one of the most enduring mysteries in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. At Ohio State University, a massive, white, T-shaped structure known as the Big Ear Radio Telescope was scanning the skies. It was part of a quiet project, listening for radio signals not from human transmitters, but from the stars themselves. Day after day, night after night, the Big Ear sifted through the static of the cosmos, collecting endless streams of numbers, most of them nothing but noise. But on that summer night, buried in the static, something extraordinary happened. A young astronomer named Jerry Amon was volunteering with the project. As he combed through the data printouts, long sheets of paper filled with endless columns of alphanumeric codes representing radio intensities. His eye caught something that didn't belong. A sequence of symbols stood out, 6EQUJ5. To most people, it looked like gibberish. But to Eamon, it was staggering. Those characters meant that the telescope had picked up a radio signal more powerful and more concentrated than almost anything else in the dataset. It wasn't broad and messy like a natural burst of static. It was sharp, narrowband, and pure. Exactly the kind of signature SETI researchers had been dreaming of. Eamon was so stunned that he grabbed a red pen and circled the sequence. In the margin, without thinking, he wrote a single word: wow. That single exclamation would forever give the mysterious detection its name, the WOW signal. What made it so unusual? First, its frequency, the WOW signal came in at just under 1420 megahertz, a frequency corresponding to the natural emission of neutral hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. SETI scientists had long speculated that if another civilization wanted to broadcast a message across the stars, hydrogen's radio frequency would be the perfect choice, a universal cosmic hailing channel that any intelligent species could recognize. The fact that the WOW signal appeared so cleanly at this precise frequency made it hard to dismiss. Second, its duration. The signal lasted for exactly 72 seconds. That wasn't random. Big Ear's design meant that as the Earth rotated, the telescope would sweep across a patch of sky in about that length of time. If the signal had come from a fixed point in space, it would appear and fade over exactly 72 seconds, which is precisely what happened. To the scientists, this was a tantalizing confirmation that the signal wasn't coming from Earth or some passing aircraft. It was fixed, steady, and cosmic. And yet, when astronomers pointed the telescope back at the same patch of sky, they found nothing. The signal never repeated. Night after night, they tried again. Silence. Other observatories joined in the hunt. Nothing. In science, repetition is everything. Without it, evidence fades into anomaly. And so the WOW signal became something maddeningly rare, a perfect mystery. Over the decades, countless explanations have been proposed. Some scientists suggested it was a passing comet, emitting hydrogen naturally as its icy surface evaporated. Others thought it might have been a reflection of a terrestrial radio transmission, bouncing off space debris. But each theory has been poked full of holes. The comet hypothesis doesn't align with the exact frequency and strength observed. The terrestrial reflection theory doesn't account for the narrowband purity. To this day, no natural explanation fully fits the data. And so the WOW signal has remained a ghost in astronomy, a single whisper from the cosmos that refuses to explain itself. For SETI researchers, it was both inspiring and frustrating. Inspiring because it showed exactly the kind of signal they were looking for. Frustrating because it happened only once, like a door opening just a crack before slamming shut forever. Culturally, the WOW signal took on a life of its own. It was featured in documentaries, books, and science fiction stories. It became the go-to example in debates about extraterrestrial life. If we've never detected aliens, then what about the WOW signal? Its legend grew because it was never debunked. Simply remained unexplained. For half a century, it has stood as the single strongest candidate for an extraterrestrial transmission. But here's the catch: the WOW signal didn't tell us where it came from. The telescope's resolution meant it came from somewhere in the constellation Sagittarius, near the center of our Milky Way. That's a vast region of sky filled with countless stars. For years, astronomers assumed the source was some distant star system, maybe thousands of light years away. Which is why Loeb's new suggestion shocked the community, because according to his calculations, the WOW signal may not have come from some impossibly faraway star. It may have come from an object now inside our solar system. That object is 3I Atlas, a giant interstellar body discovered in 2024. Loeb points out that in 1977, 3I Atlas's calculated position aligned strikingly close to the origin coordinates of the WOW signal. In other words, the most famous radio burst in SETI history may have come not from deep space, but from a traveler that has now come to visit us. This is why the WOW signal still matters. It isn't just a relic of SETI history. It's an open question. It's a puzzle piece waiting for a match. And Loeb believes 3I Atlas might be that match. If he's right, The mystery we've been chasing for nearly 50 years is not just alive, but within our grasp. So what exactly is 3I Atlas? And why does Loeb think it could have been the voice behind the wow signal? That's where our story takes its next turn. In the spring of 2024, astronomers scanning the skies with the Atlas Survey Telescope in Hawaii spotted something strange. A faint, icy object gliding against the stars, its orbit unlike anything they had ever calculated before. At first, it looked like another comet, one of the countless icy leftovers drifting through our solar system. But when its motion was charted, the truth became clear. This was no ordinary comet. Its path was hyperbolic, meaning it wasn't bound to the sun at all. It had come from beyond, racing through the galaxy, merely stopping for a brief encounter with our system before continuing its endless voyage. Astronomers designated it 3I Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar object ever detected by humanity, after the famous Oumuamua in 2017 and comet 2I Borisov in 2019. The I stood for interstellar. It meant this object was not born in our solar system. It was a wanderer, billions of years old, possibly older than Earth itself, carrying secrets from alien star systems. Suddenly, the world's telescopes turned toward it, and almost immediately the questions began. Unlike Borisov, which looked like a fairly normal comet, 3I Atlas seemed wrong. Its coma, the glowing cloud of gas surrounding it, was dominated by carbon dioxide, far more than expected. In fact, the CO2 outgassing appeared unusually strong compared to water, which is rare. Most comets in our system are water-rich with a balance of carbon compounds. This imbalance suggested that 3I Atlas was made of very different material, forged in a star system unlike our own. Even stranger, spectroscopic studies found evidence of nickel vapor, but far less iron than expected. In cosmic chemistry, nickel and iron usually travel together. Their separation was an oddity no one could explain. Its trajectory was also unsettling. Not only was it on a retrograde orbit, moving opposite the planets, but its orbital plane was tilted in a way that seemed too convenient. Some astronomers noted it passed unusually close to the orbital paths of Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, almost as if threading a cosmic needle. Was this coincidence? Probably. But to Loeb and others open to more radical interpretations, it raised eyebrows. Loeb, who had already shaken the astronomy world by suggesting Oumuamua might be alien technology, began to scrutinize 3I Atlas. His team placed it on what he calls the Loeb scale, a system he devised to classify interstellar objects by how anomalous they are. On this scale, 3I Atlas was rated level 4, a middling score. It wasn't as bizarre as Oumuamua, but it wasn't perfectly ordinary either. Its chemistry, trajectory, and alignment all left questions hanging in the air. But then came the most provocative connection. Loeb noticed that the calculated position of 3I Atlas in the late 1970s intersected with the region of the sky where the wow signal had been detected. It wasn't a perfect bullseye, but close enough to raise a startling possibility. In fact, Loeb calculated the probability of such a coincidence being random at less than 1%. That meant, if his math held, there was a non-negligible chance that the famous unexplained signal of 1977 had actually been transmitted from 3I Atlas, when the object was hundreds of astronomical units away. To support this, Loeb looked at the physics. If the wow signal really came from 3I Atlas, it would have required a transmitter power between 0.5 and 2 gigawatts, an immense output but not unimaginable for an advanced civilization. For comparison, the most powerful radio transmitters on Earth today reach into the megawatt range. A gigawatt signal directed across the void would certainly have been detectable. And the wow signal's sharp hydrogen line frequency was exactly the kind of universal calling card scientists would expect intelligent life to use. Critics argue the connection is tenuous. The wow signal was a one-time event, never repeated. No current radio telescopes have detected signals coming from 3I Atlas as it passes through the solar system now. And yet Loeb insists it is worth looking. He has called for targeted radio observations of the object, especially tuned to the hydrogen line, to see if the faintest whisper might still be detectable. In his view, the cost of not checking would be far greater than the cost of entertaining an idea that might sound far-fetched. Even setting aside the wow signal, 3I Atlas is a fascinating interstellar time capsule. Its ice and dust carry the chemical fingerprints of the system it was born in, possibly billions of years ago around a star long since gone cold. Studying it allows scientists to sample alien chemistry without leaving home. To hold such an object in our telescopes is to hold a piece of another world, a shard of the galaxy's deep history. But if Loeb is correct, it may be more than a relic. It may be an artifact, a probe disguised as a comet, a vessel carrying technology instead of ice. To most astronomers, that is speculation bordering on fantasy. But it is precisely the kind of possibility that keeps the wow signal alive after nearly 50 years. Because even if the chance is slim, the payoff, proof that we are not alone, is so profound that ignoring it feels like an act of blindness. And so 3I Attilas has become the new battleground in the age-old debate. Is it simply a weird comet from another star system? Or is it part of a much bigger story? One that began with a mysterious 72-second signal in 1977 and is only now coming to light. One thing is certain. This object has forced us to rethink not only our own solar system, but how we approach the unknown. Because if 3I Atlas really is linked to the WOW signal, then the universe has already spoken to us once. The question is whether we were truly listening. For nearly half a century, the WOW signal has stood alone, an unsolved riddle etched into SETI history. It was clean, strong, and eerily placed at the hydrogen frequency, the universal channel of the cosmos. And yet it vanished as quickly as it appeared, never to be heard again. To most astronomers, the mystery eventually settled into legend, a tantalizing anomaly, but little more. But to Avi Loeb, the outspoken Harvard astrophysicist, known for challenging orthodoxy, the WOW signal may not be a dead end at all. Instead, he believes it could be the first breadcrumb in a much larger trail, a trail that leads directly to 3I Atlas, the interstellar object now gliding through our solar system. Loeb's claim begins with something deceptively simple: geometry. When astronomers calculated the orbital path of 3I Atlas backward in time, they discovered that in 1977, the very year the WOW signal was detected, the object would have been passing through roughly the same region of the sky where Big Ear picked up that fateful transmission. Not perfectly overlapping, but close enough to raise eyebrows. To quantify this, Loeb ran the numbers. He found that the probability of such a spatial coincidence was less than 1%. In other words, the chance that an interstellar object just happened to line up with the WOW signal by accident was tiny. To Loeb, this wasn't something to dismiss. To him, it screamed for attention. What if the WOW signal wasn't from a distant star? What if it came from an interstellar visitor passing through our own backyard? But Loeb didn't stop with geometry. He dug deeper into the physics. If 3I Atlas was indeed the source, how powerful would its transmitter have needed to be? The answer was staggering, but not impossible. At a distance of about 600 astronomical units in 1977, the transmission on the hydrogen line would have required roughly 0.5 to 2 gigawatts of power to be detected at Earth. That's orders of magnitude, beyond our strongest radio stations, but well within the capabilities of an advanced civilization. For comparison, Earth's Arecibo Observatory, before its collapse, could broadcast at around 1 megawatt. A civilization a few centuries more advanced than ours could easily scale that up to the gigawatt level. Then there was the frequency shift, the WOW! Signal was observed with a slight blue shift, equivalent to about 10 kilometers per second relative motion. Loeb compared this with the approach velocity of 3I Atlas, which was measured at around 60 kilometers per second. While not an exact match, the similarity was intriguing. If the signal had indeed originated from 3I Atlas, its relative motion could naturally explain why the frequency was slightly offset. For Loeb, these details stacked up into a provocative picture. He was not claiming proof, but he was insisting on the possibility, and for him, that was enough to justify further investigation. Extraordinary claims, he wrote, should not be dismissed without extraordinary effort to test them. He called for new radio observations of 3I Atlas as it passed through the inner solar system, specifically tuned to the hydrogen line. If even the faintest signal was detected, it would revolutionize our understanding of the universe. But of course, the pushback was immediate. Critics argued that Loeb was cherry-picking coincidences. They pointed out that the WOW signal's origin was uncertain within a wide patch of sky, meaning many objects could be claimed to overlap. Others noted that the gigawatt power requirement was enormous, and assuming alien technology was the explanation, violated the principle of Occam's razor. In other words, why jump to aliens when a simpler explanation however unsatisfying, might exist. Loeb's reputation added fuel to the fire. This was not the first time he had made headlines with controversial claims. In 2017, when the interstellar object Oumuamua puzzled astronomers with its bizarre shape and acceleration, Loeb suggested it might be an alien probe, claim that earned him both worldwide media attention and sharp criticism from his peers. To many, his linking of 3I Atlas to the WOW signal felt like more of the same, bold speculation without hard evidence. And yet, even his harshest critics admit something important. Loeb asks the questions others are too cautious to ask. After all, the WOW signal has no widely accepted natural explanation, and 3I Atlas is undeniably unusual. Why not test the hypothesis? Why not listen carefully as the object passes near Earth and Mars? If the answer is silence, so be it. But if the answer is something more, there's another angle that gives Loeb's idea weight. The WOW signal's duration, exactly 72-second Ulbrich, matched Big Ear's beam crossing time perfectly. That means the source was not nearby interference, but something fixed against the stars. If 3I Atlas was in that patch of sky at that moment, then it fits the geometry not just loosely, but convincingly. The one-time nature of the event could even make sense if the signal was a directed beam that Earth only briefly crossed. In that case, the fact that it never repeated might not be a failure, but a clue that we were lucky to intercept it even once. This is where the debate turns philosophical. For most of science, an unrepeatable signal is considered noise. But for Loeb, the rarity is what makes it extraordinary. The cosmos doesn't owe us repetition, he argues. If an intelligent transmission brushed past Earth once in 1977, we may not get another chance unless we actively seek it out. 3I Atlas, he insists, gives us that second chance. The implications are staggering. If the WOW signal did come from 3I Atlas, then humanity has already been contacted, not in a dramatic landing of ships, but in a quiet, almost unnoticed whisper from the stars. And now, decades later, the messenger has arrived in our solar system. If we ignore it, history may one day judge us as the civilization that looked away when the universe called. But there's also a darker layer. What if the signal wasn't a greeting, but something else? A probe checking for life-bearing planets? A beacon not meant for us, but for others? Loeb himself avoids sensational claims of intent, focusing instead on the physics. But the possibilities hang in the air. The WOW signal was not just a question of origin, it was a question of meaning. If it was deliberate, then someone somewhere already knows we exist. In the end, Loeb's hypothesis forces us into uncomfortable territory. It demands that we take anomalies seriously, even when they stretch the imagination. It reminds us that science advances not by ignoring the strange, but by confronting it. And it leaves us with a choice. Dismiss the WOW signal as an unsolvable fluke, or consider that an interstellar visitor now within our grasp may have been speaking to us all along. As 3I Atlas continues its journey through the solar system, astronomers have a rare opportunity. They can point their radio telescopes, tune in to the hydrogen line, and listen. The odds may be small, the silence may be deafening, but if a whisper comes again, even faintly, it would mean the WOW signal was never just an accident. It was a message, and it has been waiting for us to hear it. Even if we set aside the WOW signal for a moment, 3I Atlas refuses to behave like an ordinary comet. From the moment astronomers trained their instruments on it, the data began to surprise them. Every interstellar visitor is precious, a messenger from beyond our sun, carrying the chemistry of alien star systems frozen inside its icy shell. But 3I Atlas is more than a messenger. It is a puzzle that seems to break the rules we thought we understood. The first anomaly appeared in its composition. Most comets in our solar system are dominated by water ice, with smaller amounts of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and other trace elements. When 2I Borisov, another interstellar comet, was studied in 2019, it broadly fit that pattern, reassuring scientists that interstellar chemistry might be similar to ours. But 3I Atlas was different. Its coma, the halo of gas boiling off as it approached the sun, was unusually rich in carbon dioxide. In fact, CO2 appeared far stronger than water vapor in its spectrum. That imbalance doesn't match typical comets from our system. It suggests that 3I Atlas was forged in a place where conditions were dramatically unlike those of the early solar system. Perhaps near a faint, cold star where carbon dioxide ice was more stable than water, or perhaps in an environment we haven't yet imagined. Then came the metallic signatures. Spectroscopic analysis revealed clear evidence of nickel vapor around 3I Atlas. Nickel, on its own, is not strange. Many comets and asteroids contain it. But what was missing was just as important: iron. Normally, nickel and iron go hand in hand. They are cosmic siblings forged together in the fiery hearts of dying stars. To see nickel without its twin is like finding smoke without fire. No one has a good explanation for why 3I Atlas seems to favor nickel over iron. It hints at unusual formation conditions, or perhaps an evolutionary history that stripped one element while preserving the other. The trajectory of 3I Atlas only deepened the mystery. Its orbit is retrograde, moving opposite the planets, tilted steeply relative to the solar system's plane. That alone isn't unprecedented. Highly interstellar objects come from all directions. But what raised eyebrows was how its path seemed to thread near the orbits of Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. At first glance, it could be coincidence. But to Loeb and others, open to speculation, the precision of these flybys looked deliberate, almost like a probe performing a sequence of gravitational assists. It is a bold suggestion, but the numbers are there. Its trajectory brings it unusually close to multiple planets in succession, as if designed to maximize observational opportunities. Some astronomers also noted the low, non-gravitational acceleration of the object. Many comets experience small pushes from outgassing jets as sunlight heats their surfaces. But 3I Atlas's behavior seemed muted, as if its surface activity didn't fully explain its motion. While not as extreme as Oumuamua's strange acceleration, it added another layer of peculiarity. To frame these oddities, Loeb introduced what he calls the Loeb scale, a way to classify interstellar visitors by their level of anomaly. On this scale, 3I Atlas ranks as level 4, not as baffling as Oumuamua, which he considered much higher, but still well above ordinary. It's not an object that can be comfortably explained away. Its chemistry is unusual, its trajectory suspiciously convenient, and its metals inconsistent with expectations. It sits in that grey zone where most astronomers shrug and say, interesting, but Loeb leans forward and says, investigate. There is another piece of evidence that unsettles scientists: its age. Estimates suggest 3I Atlas may have been traveling for billions of years, older than the solar system itself. Think about that for a moment. When Earth was still molten rock, this object was already wandering between the stars. It has crossed interstellar space, endured supernovae shockwaves, passed by countless stars, and still survived intact. To study it is to hold a relic of cosmic prehistory, older than any fossil, older than any record of life on Earth. Whatever secrets it carries, they reach back to the dawn of the galaxy. This is why Loeb's wow. Signal connection doesn't feel like wild fantasy to him. When you line up the facts, the coincidences become harder to ignore. We have a radio burst in 1977 that has never been explained at the hydrogen frequency from the exact patch of sky 3I Atlas would have occupied. An object with chemistry unlike typical comets, with CO2 dominance and missing iron. Nickel vapor signatures that defy expectations. A trajectory that brushes close to multiple planets, almost too neatly. And an object older than Earth, carrying with it a history we can barely fathom. Taken individually, any one of these could be dismissed. Together they form a pattern that at least demands attention. Of course, critics remain skeptical. They argue that cometary diversity is vast, that we have only sampled a small number, and anomalies are to be expected. They remind us that orbital coincidences happen naturally, especially when billions of possible paths exist. And they stress that no direct signals have been detected from 3I Atlas so far. To leap from chemistry oddities to alien probes, they say, is to leap too far. But Loeb's point is not that aliens are proven. His point is that we should look. When a mystery like the WOW signal lingers unsolved for half a century and a new anomaly crosses our skies, the scientific thing to do is to investigate with every tool available. Aim our radio telescopes, point our spectrographs. Search not only for natural chemistry, but for techno-signatures, patterns that cannot be explained by nature alone. The cost of failure is small. We learn more about a comet. The reward of success, however unlikely, is civilization shattering. We discover we are not alone. And this is where the unease lives, because if 3I Atlas is ordinary, then the WOW signal remains unsolved, drifting back into legend. But if it is not ordinary, that if even one of its anomalies hints at something designed, then humanity has already been contacted, not through flashing lights in the sky, but through chemistry, geometry, and a whisper on the hydrogen line. So as telescopes continue to track us across the heavens, the question grows louder. Is it a cosmic rock forged in an alien nursery and tossed to the stars? Or is it a probe, a silent messenger disguised as ice and dust watching us as closely as we watch it? Science thrives on questions, but it survives on skepticism. And when Avi Loeb linked 3I Atlas to the WOW signal, many in the scientific community reacted with the same reflex they have shown toward his other bold claims: doubt, caution, and sometimes outright dismissal. For them, the idea that a comet-like body could be an alien probe transmitting across space sounds less like physics and more like science fiction. To understand the controversy, we need to look at the criticisms and why they persist even in the face of anomalies. The first criticism is about coincidence. The WOW signal was detected in a relatively broad swathe of sky in the constellation Sagittarius. Big Ear's beam could not pinpoint a razor-sharp source, meaning there are countless possible objects that could fit into that region. To skeptics, saying that 3I Atlas happened to be there in 1977 is not proof, but probability at work. After all over decades of scanning, astronomers have catalogued thousands of comets, asteroids, and near-Earth objects. If you look backward through time, some of them will always overlap with interesting signals just by chance. Correlation, they argue, is not causation. The second criticism targets Loeb's transmitter power calculation. For 3I Atlas, to produce a signal strong enough to be detected from hundreds of astronomical units away, it would have needed to emit between 0.5 gigawatt and 2 gigawatts of power. To skeptics, that seems wildly unrealistic, not because advanced civilizations couldn't generate that power, but because why would they? Why would an alien species hide a transmitter inside a comet-like shell, broadcasting once in 1977 and then falling silent? If their goal was to announce their presence, wouldn't they have made the signal repeat or left clearer markers? The one-time nature of the WOW signal, critics say, argues against intent. Then there is the problem of non-repetition. Science builds on reproducibility, and the WOW signal has never been reproduced. No other telescope, including more sensitive arrays like Arecibo when it was active, or the Green Bank telescope, has picked up anything remotely similar from that patch of sky. Even now, as 3I Atlas passes through the solar system, radio astronomers have not reported any unusual emissions. To many, silence is the final verdict. If the object were broadcasting even faintly, our modern instruments should have caught it. The composition anomalies of 3I Atlas also face skeptical reinterpretation. Yes, its coma is rich in carbon dioxide, but cometary chemistry is notoriously diverse. We've only sampled a fraction of the comets in our own solar system, and even they defy neat categories. Every comet is weird in its own way, one astronomer noted. To skeptics, the nickel without iron signature might not mean alien engineering. It might simply mean we still don't fully understand how cometary chemistry evolves. Cosmic diversity is vast. Labeling every anomaly as evidence of technology risks falling into the trap of wishful thinking. Critics also point to Loeb's track record. In 2017, when Oumuamua raced through the solar system, its odd acceleration and unusual shape sparked fierce debate. Most scientists leaned toward natural explanations: a fragment of a planet, a hydrogen iceberg, or a fluffy dust aggregate. But Loeb suggested it was an alien probe, a possibility he defended in books and interviews. To his peers, this was reckless. It blurred the line between scientific hypothesis and media spectacle. Since then, some in the field view his every new claim through the lens of that controversy. Loeb sees aliens where others see comets, they say. His reputation has become part of the criticism, a shadow that follows his every paper. Another major counter-argument revolves around Occam's razor, the principle that the simplest explanation is usually the best. For most astronomers, invoking alien technology is the most extraordinary explanation possible, and therefore the least likely, unless every natural possibility has been exhausted. With 3I Atlas, they argue, we are nowhere near that point. Yes, it is unusual, but so are many natural objects. Science has a long history of labeling things impossible, only to later find perfectly ordinary answers. To skeptics, calling it a probe risks jumping 10 steps ahead without climbing the stairs in between. Still, even skeptics admit one thing. Loeb's claims have value because they force the community to engage with anomalies rather than bury them. The wow. Signal is an unsolved mystery. 3i Atlas does have strange chemistry. Ignoring these facts, just because they are uncomfortable, is not good science either. The tension, then, is not about whether anomalies exist, but about how far we should go in interpreting them. Should we assume unusual data points to natural diversity we don't yet understand? Or should we open the door to radical possibilities, even if the odds are small? This tension is amplified by public perception. Loeb's ideas capture headlines, spark viral debates, and inspire imagination. The average person might not care about nickel-to-iron ratios in cometary spectra, but tell them an interstellar object could be an alien probe, and suddenly the mystery feels alive. Critics resent this, fearing it cheapens science and gives the public the impression that speculation is fact. Supporters argue the opposite, that this kind of bold framing inspires curiosity and drives funding for new research. And so, the divide deepens. On one side, the careful, methodical astronomers insisting that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. On the other, Avi Loeb, willing to risk credibility to argue that extraordinary evidence may already be in front of us if only we dare to look. The reality perhaps lies somewhere in between. The wow. Signal remains unexplained. 3i Atlas remains unusual. Neither fact proves alien technology. Neither fact rules it out. What they do is remind us how much of the cosmos we still don't understand, and how fragile our certainty can be. In the end, the criticisms do not erase the mystery, they sharpen it. Because if Loeb is wrong, then we are simply confronted with an interstellar comet that adds to the diversity of the universe, a scientific prize in its own right. But if he is even partly right, if the wow Signal and 3i Atlas are linked, then the universe has already whispered to us once, and the burden of proof is not just on the skeptics to dismiss, but on humanity to listen. For decades, the wow Signal has been a whisper in the dark, haunting, unexplained, but ultimately silent. Now, Avi Loeb's hypothesis dares us to imagine, what if it wasn't silence at all? What if it was communication? If 3i Atlas really was the source of the wow Signal, then the implications are as vast as the universe itself, because that would mean humanity has already been contacted. And not by a faraway star we can barely see, but by a visitor that has now come into our own solar system. The first possibility is the most optimistic, a beacon of greeting. SETI researchers have long argued that hydrogen's 1420 MHz line is the most universal frequency in the cosmos. It's like the channel 1 of the universe. Every advanced civilization would know it because hydrogen is everywhere. The wow Signal's placement on that line has always made it special. If 3i Atlas really transmitted at that frequency, it might have been sending a deliberate message, one designed to be recognized by any species intelligent enough to be listening, a kind of cosmic hello. If that's true, then humanity is not alone. We are part of a galaxy already awake with intelligence, and 3i Atlas may be proof that someone out there wanted us to know. But there's another, more unsettling scenario. A probe disguised as a comet. Imagine a civilization advanced enough to send small, comet-like objects across interstellar space, each one carrying instruments, sensors, maybe even transmitters. They drift silently, indistinguishable from natural debris, until they pass close enough to a star system to take a closer look. If the wow Signal was a transmission, perhaps it wasn't a greeting, but a test, a ping like radar, designed to see if anyone in this solar system was listening. And now, decades later, the probe itself has arrived. If so, then humanity is being studied, not courted, watched, not welcomed. That possibility turns the mystery into something darker. There is also the chilling idea of a cosmic trap. Loeb himself doesn't speculate on motives, but history teaches us that not all encounters between civilizations are equal. What if the WOW signal was not meant for us at all? What if it was a broadcast meant for others? A signal flare marking our system for attention? To us, it was a mystery. But to whoever it was intended for, it may have been a message with meaning we cannot yet decipher. If that is the case, then humanity is not the audience, but the incidental bystander. And if 3i Atlas is more than it seems, we may have already been drawn into a story larger than ourselves. Another scenario is more sobering. A dying echo, the WOW signal may not have been a deliberate transmission, but a relic. What if 3i Atlas once carried technology, once transmitted messages, but is now nothing more than a drifting corpse of an ancient civilization? A broken probe, long forgotten, still emitting faint bursts until its power ran dry. If so, then the signal we detected in 1977 may have been its last cry, not a greeting, but a memorial. That interpretation shifts the story from awe to tragedy. It would mean that intelligent life has existed before, but like all things, it too has a lifespan. And perhaps 3i Atlas is carrying not hope, but warning. And then there is the possibility that shakes science to its core. Life is not rare. It is inevitable. The WOW signal, if linked to 3i Atlas, would not be an isolated miracle. It would suggest that the galaxy is seeded with intelligence, that interstellar space is not empty but full of watchers, travelers, and explorers. In that case, Earth is not special. Humanity is not unique. We are not the first. We are one among many. For a species raised on the belief that we are at the center of the story, this would be a profound and perhaps uncomfortable revelation. Each of these scenarios forces us to ask questions we are not prepared to answer. If the WOW signal was a greeting, why did it stop? If it was a probe, what does it want? If it was a relic, what happened to its makers? And if life is everywhere with Oumuamua, why have we not seen more of it? The silence since 1977 could mean nothing, or it could mean everything. The implications ripple far beyond astronomy. Religion, philosophy, politics, all would be shaken. How would humanity respond to proof that another intelligence has already touched us? Would we unite in awe or fracture in fear? Would governments reveal the truth or bury it under secrecy? History suggests both awe and paranoia. The Cold War, after all, nearly brought humanity to destruction over mere rumors and mistrust. What would happen if the rumor became reality? Even in science, the shift would be seismic. If 3i Atlas carried technology, it would redefine what we consider normal in astronomy. Every interstellar visitor would no longer be dismissed as a chunk of ice or rock. Each one would have to be examined as a potential artifact. Funding for SETI would skyrocket. Telescopes would be tuned not just to stars, but to the silent wanderers drifting between them. The search for techno-signatures would become a mainstream pursuit, not a fringe idea. In other words, the scientific paradigm would tilt overnight. But perhaps the most haunting implication is this. If 3i Atlas is connected to the WOW signal, then they already know we exist. In 1977, humanity was just beginning to experiment with radio astronomy. We were fragile, unprepared, unknowing. And yet, we may have already been seen. That thought lingers like a shadow. If we were noticed then, what has been happening since? Have other probes passed silently undetected? Has Earth already been catalogued, archived, perhaps even judged? These are not questions science can yet answer, but they are questions that force us to see ourselves differently. Because the story of the WOW signal and 3i Atlas, if true, is not really about aliens. It is about us. About what it means to be intelligent, fragile, and curious in a universe that may already be full of life. It challenges us to confront our deepest hopes and fears, that we are not alone, and that being part of a larger galactic community might not be comforting, but terrifying. And so, Loeb's hypothesis is not just a piece of speculation. It is a mirror. It forces us to imagine futures we are not yet ready for. It dares us to wonder if the greatest discovery of all has already happened, and we simply failed to recognize it. And so, we arrive at the edge of possibility. Avi Loeb's hypothesis is not a declaration of truth. It is not proof. It is speculation, bold, provocative, and deeply unsettling. But speculation does not mean dismissal. Because when an anomaly as famous as the WOW Signal lingers unsolved for nearly 50 years, and an interstellar object as unusual as 3I Atlas cuts through our skies. The coincidence demands more than silence. It demands investigation. Skeptics will say it's chance, a quirk of data and orbital geometry. They may be right. But what if they're wrong? What if 3I Atlas really was the source of that whisper in 1977? What if the most famous signal in SETI history was not just a ghost in the noise, but a message? And if it was a message, then the story isn't over. Because that raises a far greater question. What else might it be sending? Are we even listening? As telescopes track 3I Atlas across the heavens, humanity has a rare chance, perhaps our only chance, to test the unthinkable. To listen again, not just for the faint hiss of natural chemistry, but for the possibility of design. For a signal, a pattern, a techno-signature that would change everything. This isn't just about astronomy. It's about whether we are brave enough to confront the possibility that the universe has already spoken to us once, and that it may be speaking still. And so, the mystery deepens.
If the wow
signal was real, then 3I Atlas may be more than ice and dust. It may be carrying answers, or warnings, or something we cannot yet imagine. The question is not whether the truth is out there. The question is whether we have the courage to find it. In our next video, we'll explore exactly that, how astronomers might detect an active transmission from 3I Atlas, and what kind of technology could be hidden inside an interstellar visitor. Until then, stay curious, because sometimes the silence of the universe is only silence because we have not learned how to listen.